mere moments ago when I was running to get my phone. If you can mute and then unmute when you want to speak, that will be really helpful. We've been having a lot of interference issues, so we may go in and mute you if we're hearing a lot of noise, but if you can control that, that ends up helping us quite a bit. And on that note, I will mute.
And there's also a raise hands function. I don't know if Leslie, if you have the participants list up, you can see like the raise hands function. If not, you can just speak. It's a small enough group, I suppose.
Ooh, I'm looking for how you get to participants list.
Yeah, over to the right, you'll see like if you hover your cursor over the middle, you'll see a menu bar pops up, and then there's like, it looks like two little people kind of next to the red hang up button, and it'll be participants if you click on that.
Okay, I see it. And I saw Yasmin's hand up, I think.
I was just testing it.
Yeah. And the only thing is, I can unlower the hand myself. So sometimes I'll do that because a lot of times people forget to lower it and it looks like then they've already spoken, but you can always just re-click it on like you just did. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Guys ready? Did Brian get back on?
Yep.
Oh. Okay. I honestly don't have any announcements. I know we have a big day coming up and hopefully we can come to some conclusions because they would like to see this for the November commission meeting in case there are some statutory changes that have to be made in January. So we have a big day ahead of us. If necessary, we could always add it to the next agenda next month, but we can't allot too much time to it, maybe 45 minutes or so. So hopefully we can get done with it. And I think somebody else on this call has an announcement as well.
Oh, yeah, and I just want to let y'all know I am retiring, and I guess effective pretty soon. So I've enjoyed working with all of you during this brief time, some of y'all for longer than a brief time. And so after this, it'll be Vanessa or new Deputy General Counsel that'll help out. And you'll always have Amber as well, since she does, as I've said repeatedly, she does do all the work around here basically. So I will still stay engaged, and I really would like to see some work product out of this meeting. And I can play bad cop too, if you know good cop, bad cop, because what do I care? I'm leaving. So so between the chair and me, we'll try to keep us on track and focused. And everything I saw from y'all, the submissions were great. So I think y'all are going to have a lot of good stuff to talk about today.
Was it something I said?
Nobody here is to blame.
We all have to be nice to him today.
Yeah.
Aww.
Okay, so I believe, Bob, have you already reviewed, or has Brian reviewed the minutes? I can't remember who was going.
It's Brian, and he did review them. And so if y'all have any changes to them, I can pull them up if you want. It's just really the video minutes. If you'd like to pull them up, if you'd like me to pull them up, I can pull them up. But it has been reviewed and approved, and y'all can amend it though if you wish.
Does anybody have any corrections or amendments or revisions? We're all good? Okay. I do not believe there's any public comments, correct, Mark?
Correct. There's no public comments.
Okay, here we go. Now we're open for new business. So we're going to discuss the recommendations regarding education requirements for an individual real estate broker's license. And just remember that we kind of have to balance things out because the governor has mentioned that he doesn't want any additional barriers to entry. So we have to kind of balance our thoughts in order to maybe make some changes in the future.
This is Soccer. I have a question. Do we have to make changes, or do they just want us to review it? We have to change this?
We don't have to change anything.
Okay.
But I think a lot of us feel like there is some disparity amongst education and experience that we want to change. So in order to make these changes, we at least have to make a recommendation that maybe they will consider.
Okay. Okay.
And Leslie, yeah, Before we started, I showed a one-page thing that had just popped up recently that Leslie prepared, and it's probably a little easier to read than the spreadsheet. So if y'all would like, I can put that up
Please.
with the recommendations.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, for the most part, right now, we're starting with 270 hours for qualifying, which 180 of those are already for a real estate salesperson license. And then we have an additional 630 classroom hours relating to qualifying courses, which at this point, some college courses can be applied to this. Or if you have a college degree, it could be applied. So what we need to talk about is the college degree portion and the number of hours at this point for the education.
Mhm.
So it seems like many people agree that the 630 hours may be a bit much. Also, people were kind of in consensus about the college or non-college graduate course application. So I guess we can start there. Does everybody agree that the 630 hours is too high for a non-college graduate?
No, I do not agree. This is soccer. The 630 hours, what that equates to based on everything just the way it is right now is 21 classes in 4 years. And 21 classes in 4 years ends up being about 4 classes a year or 1 class a quarter. And 1 class a quarter is, I mean, and these are classes that you can take online at ACC, at Houston Community College, at anywhere you want, or any of the real estate proprietary schools. The number 630 seems really, really high, but when you break it down to the number of courses, you're actually just asking you're asking the person, if they're taking a 30-hour course, you're asking them to take 6 hours per year. That's a class every other month. And then if they are taking classes at a university and they take a business class, they get 45 credit hours in 45 clock hours instead of 30 clock hours. Then it becomes 4 classes per year. I don't think, for someone who is actively engaged in real estate and someone who is actively engaged in being pursuing their real estate brokerage license, I don't think that's too much to ask. That I'm probably going to be the dissent from everybody here, but I just think that for a non-college graduate, or for anyone, that 630 is not a whole lot, and that's just my opinion.
Can I make a quick suggestion, Leslie?
Pardon?
I was just curious, and I know soccer wasn't in the last meeting, and I know we're all supposed to go over the documents that are posted on and that were sent to us, but I would just like to possibly suggest that as we go through this document that Mark posted, that maybe we can just hear a brief explanation of every option from the individual that made it,
Okay.
and just hear their point, and then we can kind of discuss, just so we're all on the, like hear it instead of just reading it, kind of where the thought process was.
Okay. I can tell you, as an overall guide too, I went to look at every state's website and I put together a spreadsheet of what every state does. And we are way out of line, almost by double any other state. So that's just something for us to think about as well.
Mm-hmm.
We can definitely have everybody talk about theirs. Why doesn't the staff first discuss what they did and how they came up with their recommendations?
Sure. Yeah. What we did, and I will pull up the spreadsheet for that because will help my thought process a little bit. And we looked at I guess it was 6 submissions and kind of tried to synthesize. We had 5 people meet it, and we didn't all agree on anything either. So these are all really just for discussion purposes, but we kind of came to some ideas or some consensus on a few things. We did feel that the 630 hours was out of line with other jurisdictions by a whole lot, and we maybe weren't getting as a state bang for the buck because we really don't see any better compliance or than perhaps some states, or less enforcement actions in some states. So we kind of came to somewhat of a consensus on 180 hours, although it can certainly be higher or lower. It could be the status quo, whatever y'all want on that. We also thought the college degree thing was probably overrated, just because you could get that for anything, and it doesn't have to be business, doesn't have to be real estate related. So the theory was that it would be at least college, at least business related or real estate related, and that the additional 60 hours should really be mandated, and they'd list it. So real estate brokerage or whatever courses y'all would want on that. So that was the basic thinking on that. We also kind of understood, just because what we've heard from the governor now for probably at least a year, and it's not just us, it's all occupational agencies, was that anything that increases hours in any way was going to, and y'all can recommend that. Y'all absolutely have the authority to recommend that, but we feel it would be probably wouldn't go anywhere, because it would have to get through the commission, and then it would have to be legislation, and then it'd have to get through the House and the Senate, and then through the governor's office. So we wouldn't want y'all to spend a lot of time on something that doesn't have as much chance. However, sometimes people make changes and they go through anyway. So it is still up to y'all. Does that help, Leslie?
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Can I interject just real briefly? Sorry, this is Vanessa. What Mark's talking about on this staff recommendation, this was a group. This was Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle, Director of Education Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Licensing Denise, myself, and Mark. And really what we did is we took, and Mark said this, we took a look at everyone else's comments and recommendations, and we got together and we had probably a similar conversation to what you guys are going to have in here today. This is in no way an official, Trek stance on anything. This was us trying to do what you guys are trying to do in this meeting, and also basing it on what we see in terms of being on the licensing side of things, the applications we receive, everything, just our experience with it. And we thought it could be helpful for you guys. We do have that perspective that comes from the governor's office, things like that, of where a group of us landed. It's not meant to be anything other than, hey, here's where we got, here's some perspective that we have, and perhaps it can work a little bit as a launching point, since you guys have all these other comments. So any questions you have, this is just something, we're just trying to have some numbers to at least start with, work with, versus just kind of everything out in the air. So please feel free to tear it apart, ask all the questions you want. How did we get here? Throw it in the trash, anything. I think we just wanted to be as prepared as you guys are to have this conversation, because it is really important.
Soccer, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question for that. I like, us keeping the 730, the 270. I do like us having the college be real estate or business related, because I have a degree in electrical engineering, has nothing to do with real estate. And because of that, I personally made the decision to take all real estate classes, but not everybody does that. Because I thought to myself, engineering, real estate, those two have nothing to do with each other, except I can do all the real estate math in my head. That's the end of that. But the 180 as additional is a huge, it's like it's 30% of what we currently have. So I think that maybe 330 or something like that would be a happy medium. That's kind of like half of what we're asking now. We currently have 630, and if we go down to 330, that means 11 classes in 4 years. And that's 2 classes or 3 classes a year. That's a class every 150 days or so. So that's my say on that, or opinion.
Chance, want to talk about your recommendation?
Happy to. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my recommendation is a total of 630 hours, including the base education, right? Including the initial licensee education. It's removing any credit whatsoever for anything college related, and putting everybody on a level playing field. And my thought on that is, you know, I do have a business degree, and I'm in the process of getting my master's degree, and I've never talked about real estate in any of those classes. And so just a thought there, but I added, so I think there might be my option number 2, Mark?
Yes, yeah, it was done. They're in the order that they were submitted. So, and I think Leslie kept that as well for this chart.
So what I did was just say, you know, you've got to take all these classes. You get rid of the college credit piece, and I think this is where there's a mistake in this option too. I'm not saying include a mandatory 30-hour broker responsibility course. I'm saying that you have to take the broker responsibility course in the
6 hour
where you apply to become a broker. So
Are you talking about the 6 hour course, then, Chance?
I am, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'll just sort of live put these notes, and y'all can correct me when I do it wrong. All right.
Yep. So I just wanted them to take the 6 hour broker responsibility course in the renewal where they apply to be a broker, or prior to. And I think that creates, you know, a level playing field for everybody, and it's still a decent amount of classes. It's 360 over the original 270 to get your license.
Yeah, so that's 12. Yeah, that's good.
And they still have to take all the courses that are required now, which is brokerage, finance, contract forms, law, all of those things. So they're getting the coverage, and then they take an additional 330, and boom, there you go. And everybody gets treated the same.
I agree. This is soccer. Because like I said, with an electrical engineering degree, I never had anything except math that relates to real estate. And so knowing that, my brain said, there is no way that my electrical engineering degree is even remotely related to real estate. So I took all real estate classes.
Right. So that's my proposal, guys. I tried to make it as simple as I possibly could by just basically adding the broker responsibility course piece and then taking out the credit for college.
Soccer, I see your hands up again. Do you have a comment?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm lowering it. I'm sorry. Mark, you need to get on your job. You're supposed to lower my hand for me, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've got the other screen up, so I'll probably
I'm
be
messing with you. I'm messing with you.
deficient.
That's
And I just have to say, Soccer, so impressed with the electrical engineering thing. I think you should get extra credit for that, but
yeah, extra credit for partial differential equations. Yay. And nobody's gonna know what that is. There you go.
Okay, you ready?
This is Jennifer, Director of Education. Chance, would you consider any consideration for a college degree in real estate specifically? I understand that, you know, not business, or, you know, your perspective is not business or not anything else, but
right.
Just a
so
question.
I put that in my proposal that may be something that we would want to. I mean, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, Baylor's the only real estate degree program out there right now in the state of Texas, right?
There's others. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if that's what this group wants to do, I'm fine with that. If it's a specific real estate degree, I just figured it would be awfully easy for licensing and everybody else if everybody had to do the same thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And would that be, you know, you still have the required 270 as a sales agent license, but if you had a degree in real estate, then that could absorb the remainder of the hours.
Except for broker responsibility course.
Exactly. Okay.
That's
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Holly, are you ready? Is Holly here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, do you remember who option 3? Oh, there you go.
Did you come back to Holly? Next one. So Jennifer, I may need your help here too, and I've kind of discussed this in the past. Going back to the college education, I agree with having a real estate degree or having real estate based classes, but what I don't understand, why is that not required as a salesperson, and why does that come in as a broker when you've already been experienced and licensed?
Sorry. That's a great question, Leslie, and I actually don't date far enough back to really answer that. My thought process is that in order to become a sales agent, the commission originally wanted to mandate all of the content for the courses to ensure competency at a minimum skills level competency in order to pass the licensing exam. And so our qualifying courses tie into the content outline for the national and state licensing exams. We don't know necessarily that the content in real estate courses that colleges and universities offer correlate specifically to the content outlines for the exam, but would consider that after an initial induction into these base courses that we mandate, anything supplemental from a college or university that related to real estate would also be sufficient in obtaining a higher level license.
Right.
That's about the best that I think I can answer your question.
It's like that would be coming before the broker license, so it just kind of flows into that. So my suggestion was that a college degree, unless it's a real estate related degree or real estate related courses, could count, but it needed to be in the last 5 to 10 years or wherever we came up with a number in there. But could those courses count, whether they're from a community college or a university? Yes, they could count towards that, but it needs to be within that time span. And it doesn't have to obviously be the degree, it could be the courses itself. Mm-hmm. But I do think, then my next question would be, which would be the hard part, is if it's not from Texas, then the courses may be a little different as well. Mm-hmm. So, because our contracts, and I've studied for the Colorado real estate exam, and it's totally different. So that would be another one of my concerns. But I do think the 630 hours is excessive. I think more experience, real-time experience is more important than the education end of it. I know that I can sit through classes all day long, but I really don't apply that until I get out into the real world. And that's where most of my knowledge comes from when I'm dealing with real life. So I came up with my conclusion, because we had 270 classroom hours right now, but 180 of those should be taken when you're a real estate agent or salesperson. Mm-hmm. Left us with 90, and then I added more, so you would just have 360 hours total to become a broker. But it would be specific classes that I have listed that pertain to that. And if they have taken those in the last 5, 10 years, whatever we had come back with, it could be applied.
And Leslie, the concept of having education completed within a specific time frame, not going further back than whatever, like you're saying, 5 or 10 years, that's been something that has been a discussion point for a number of years. So I think that's something valid to bring to this group.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we move to the next person? Is Holly back on? Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. It's
I
your
just
turn.
didn't unmute fast enough.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, so my thought was along the same lines as yours on my proposal is because if we have it within a 4 or 5 year period leading up to, you've been a salesperson, you're already a licensed salesperson in the state of Texas in order to obtain your broker's license. And so reducing down to things that brokers use on a regular basis is what my thought was. So college credit counting, and then having specific courses that you need to take, including broker responsibility and contracts, from what I see on a frequent basis, that would be helpful. So that's how I came up with the numbers that I came up with, because I do think 630 is a bit excessive whenever you need to have the experience in conjunction with the education.
Perfect. Bill, are you ready?
I am, thank you. I sort of approached it a little bit different. I sort of said, if we were going to create a new broker's licensing, criteria, what would we do? And I sort of worked backwards, and a lot of my response is actually very similar to what other folks have already said. But what I sort of said, I said, look, to become the agent, there's a hurdle. To then become the broker, there's a hurdle. And then, just to qualify, I'm sorry, let me go back. To become the agent, there's an application and a testing requirement. Then to become a broker, there's an application requirement and then a testing requirement again. And then there's an ongoing maintenance and qualification and expertise requirement after that on an ongoing basis. So this is part of a process in my mind. And I also so that was number one. Number two, I try to compare my comments to other professional licenses, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a CPA, whether it's somebody else in an MBA process, and say, look, how much to get qualified to take the test we should be able to allow people to have an application where they can then be qualified to take a test. Whether they pass the test is the next hurdle, and whether they maintain the license after that test is another hurdle. But we shouldn't make the hurdle to be able to qualify to make the test so aggressive. So what I sort of did is I backed up and I said, look, if you go to college, you get 120 hours to go to college. I mean, that's basically how many hours you have to go. You get basically 30 hours a year for 4 years. That's 120 hours. I don't care whether it's real estate related or not. To be a real estate agent, to be a real estate broker, to be a real estate professional, you have to know how to read. You have to know how to write. You have to know how to do a little bit of math. You have to understand non-real estate stuff, psychology, history, in other words, a general knowledge base is absolutely essential for a professional in our industry to be able to provide good service. Even if you go into a advanced degree, attorneys only have to have another 90 hours. MBA only has to have another 60 hours. So, I mean, and again, at the end of those education requirements, you're not ready to be an attorney or a business person. You're just basically have some basic qualifications. You then have to study for the test. You have to make sure you know the particulars of the industry, and that's another hurdle that somebody has to do. So what I said in my idea, I said, look, why don't we make 240 hours sort of the requirement to go into the brokerage application, to allow a person to go to the brokerage application stage. And of that, 120 hours, I said, if a person has a college degree, they've got a certain level of education, commitment. It's not that they're an expert in real estate, but they've got some skills and some bona fides that said these folks can operate as a professional in an industry. And so the 120, I sort of said, let's give people credit for going to college, and because that's a certain level of qualification. To unfortunately those folks that can't go to college or haven't been able to go to college, let's say, okay, if you need to get those extra 120 hours of general information or education somewhere on your own. And so that was sort of taking care of the college versus non-college issue. Then I said, okay, let's get another 120 hours of real estate requirements so that when you are going to get the broker's test, you have some information on how to be a real estate person. And so what I said is, let's make it 240, and 120 of those are general stuff, and 120 of those are real estate related stuff. And the real estate related stuff can come from your college. If you got college stuff that gave you credit, you can get credit for some of that. If you had advanced degrees, you should be able to get credit for that education stuff. If you go to trade stuff, whatever it is, we can figure out how to give credit for real estate related courses. And I thought that was sort of a good baseline education deal. I also thought that as part of being able to sit for the exam, you really do need to have some experience level 2. And the experience and the education are not independent. They're combined. They really have a relationship to each other. And so I said, listen, if a person has some expertise, has some experience, has been in the business, and we'll get to that in the education part, but these are not independent things to say only that or only this. They really are combined. So, and I'm sorry to be long-winded, but this is a complicated thing for me to think through. And maybe it's a lot easier for you all, but this was a complicated thing for me. And I said, if you're a real estate agent, you've already completed all those basic courses. So I don't understand why we have to mandate those basic courses for a brokerage. You've already gotten those courses handled when you're an agent. And maybe the requirement on the application has to say, you have got to be a licensed real estate agent to go sit for the application for the broker. That sort of takes care of those, however many it is, 180 hours. The only difference was the 30-hour real estate brokerage course. And so I said, okay, everybody who wants to sit for the brokerage exam has to take that course. In addition, they have to have the 240, and then they have to have the education. And that allows them to sit for the exam. And that was sort of and I know it's sort of a long-winded deal, but I was trying to make it simple in my mind on how we can make people get through the process. The history, the number of hours that are being required to be able to get those in a 2-year period or a 4-year period is I think unreasonable. 640 or
630,
300 or 400 hours represents months worth of sitting in stuff during a period of time. And I don't think, we're not asking people to sit for the exam to be experts in real estate. We're giving them the opportunity to then qualify to be an expert in real estate and to continue their education and their verification of their expertise later on. So again, sorry to be so long-winded.
I have a question for Bill.
Yes.
So in yours, you say 120 for the post. Is that 120 you're using the 120 hours that people get when they get their degree? Or are you just saying that's 120 classroom hours, which is equivalent to 4 classes? Is that what you're saying, or which one?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that it's two things. The total requirement is 240 hours of education, and 120 of those have to be related to real estate.
Okay.
And the other 120 can be real estate, or it can be degree credited or other opportunity. It gives you get credit for having some background in reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, you ready to give us a quick summary of what you have?
I'm muting here. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
All right. I'm sitting in Love Field, so I'm really pleased to hear how consistent the conversation and the comments are. I think everybody agrees that the automatic credit for the 630-hour credit for the bachelor's degree is we ought to do away with. The discussion then is around what additional education should we require for a broker. I don't think the education hours and the process for becoming a real estate agent is broken, and I think we ought to leave that in place, and then require additional hours to qualify to take the test for a broker. And I'm on board with about where Chance and several others are, is an additional 330 hours of education to bring it up to around 600 or 630. I think that's kind of a happy medium in my mind. I don't know that we ought to decrease I don't think we ought to make it too easy. I think it ought that an applicant for a broker's license ought to be required to be well educated. Another system that I don't think is broken is the education courses that TREC has identified on the website as these qualify for brokerage education or education courses. And some of those are business, some of them are finance, some of them are real estate related. But that system or those courses that are outlined on the website, I think are really good. So requiring education, in addition to the 270 for salesperson, another 300 or 330 hours of education that fall within that framework that's already identified. And if they have taken those courses in their college degree pursuit, then those courses ought to get credit for those courses, or they can take them one-off courses after their salesperson license. So getting to about 600 or 630 hours, which include the initial or the base of 270 hours for the salesperson license, I think would be excellent.
Okay, Yasmin, you ready?
Yes. Okay, so yes, I am also very happy. It seems like we're all kind of on the same umbrella of thinking here. So my recommendation is very similar to, I think, a lot of people's. The 180 hours that we already have to take as a sales agent, I don't think we need to do those again as well. So I do agree with the base hours that are already set, which is the principals, law agencies, the ones that are already set for the 270. My suggestion is also to eliminate the college degree, just because, like we spoke about earlier, it's not always necessary. It doesn't. But I did like that idea that somebody brought up, that if it's a real estate degree, if somebody has that, well, then I would be okay with them getting credit for that specific degree. My recommendation was a total of 500 hours, so that would be the 270 base that's already mandated, and adding 230 more. But I would be okay with adding another 330, so we're at that 630. So just at least 500 total hours, but my main recommendation is that they have to be very specific for real estate. I think there's a lot of classes that we currently have as electives that we should mandate to be those additional 500 or 330, the 230 hours to 330 additional hours. Sorry, I'm getting confused with my numbers. Should all be very like real estate specific. Like right now we have a lot of designations and electives that we could make those mandatory. My thought process here was a sales agent is kind of like somebody having a bachelor's degree. And if you're going to become a broker, that's kind of like getting your master's degree. And just like when you get a master's degree, your classes are very specific to what you're training or what you're becoming specialized in. So that's why the additional hours that I'm recommending should be, like things that would actually help us become better brokers. I have a list attached, but it's like, like truly understanding like title, the back end of title things. Some classes that we have like designations like new home construction or 1031 exchanges, things that are very specific to the things that we actually do on a day-to-day basis that are going to help us help our sales agents that we're managing, and in turn help the public, which is the ultimate goal, to help the public. So my recommendation is to keep the hours, but to kind of come up with the classes that are very specific to our day-to-day activities that are going to help us be better brokers in general. I know we're going to talk about the experience, but just kind of like Brian just said, I don't think that part is broken in the sense of somebody put a lot of time into it. I did have a recommendation of just adding like a group A or B when somebody has management experience, but we'll talk about that because I do think also that the classes with the experience are tied, is not independent. They have to work together. So that's kind of my recommendation, as brief as I could put it.
Jennifer, before we continue on this discussion, can I ask a quick question of you about the 270 hours? Is Jennifer still on?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, I'm here.
I have a quick question. So the 270 classroom hours you have as a broker, for the most part, the 180 is already covered as a salesperson. Is it listed again as the 270 for people that aren't coming from Texas, or where does that come from? Because you have to be a sales agent before you are a broker.
Right. If you're following the traditional path here in Texas, yes. You have to take the initial 180 hours of mandated courses and then an additional 90 hours of our pre-licensing courses to satisfy your first renewal term. And that's where you come up with the 270. So any sales agent who's been licensed for 2 years has completed 270 hours of education. So that baseline when you're moving into the broker's license is for the most part already there. So you only need to concentrate on what the additional coursework is.
Right. So where I'm getting a little bit of confusion is why is it added in that 270? Because you have to be a sales agent prior to becoming a broker because you have to have that experience. So you should already have that. So why is it put it there again? Is it because people are coming from out of state, or what is that for?
It's actually,
I was going to say, this is Denise, the Director of Licensing. I might be able to clarify, Jen, thanks for covering that first part. It's not actually required for you to be a licensed sales agent to apply for a broker license in Texas. Excuse me, you don't have to be a licensed agent in Texas before applying for the broker license in Texas. So we do have about 5% of our broker applicants are coming from out of state with either sales agent license or a broker license in another state. So that's why it's listed there, that they have to have those courses in order to obtain it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for clarifying that, Denise.
Yeah, no problem. And we wouldn't make them take that again. It's just those are the courses that have to be completed to apply for that license or to be eligible to sit for the exam.
So I guess because my recommendation was to do away from those 180, but obviously we could probably keep those in if just for out of state brokers that don't have that as a sales agent. But if you're from Texas and you have those 180 hours, I guess it's a moot point, right, Denise? Because you already took them. Okay, that makes sense.
You had to have completed them to get the sales agent license and then to renew it for the first time.
Mhm.
So then we would technically have to add that back on there for out of state.
So I know, I mean, this is kind of a little bit off base, but I know that y'all are talking about redoing the website. Is it easier to have something for out of state and then in state so that people understand that?
We can definitely consider, changing that, revising that, and put in that request. We usually, test it out to kind of see how that looks, and we might even want to check with our customer relations division. I'd be curious to know if they get a lot of questions or confusion about that, but that's definitely something worth looking into.
Great, thank you. Chance, do you have a question?
Well, this is
I
Bill.
do. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. I would vaguely remember us talking about this, but Mark, you may have to refresh my memory. In our last meeting, because I think I had brought up the idea of designations, and that had kind of got poo-pooed on because not everybody, designations are licensed to NAR, and we can't require people to be a realtor to apply. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yeah, I don't
That's
think
correct.
poo-poo's a legal term, but yeah.
Yeah, it was better than the other one I was going to use.
Okay. And then Bill, did you have a question? Bill?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to unmute. I got it. That's why I sort of was also confused in that it seemed like there was a double dipping of requirements, and if we're already, and when you look at the website and the requirements for the application and also the actual law, when you look at the thing, it says that the broker has to have these courses, and those are mandated courses. And so those hours, and those are the courses they have to take. And I think it needs to be clarified that if you've already taken it, you don't have to take them again. And that's why I'm getting confused over the 630 hours. The 630 hours, I think, already includes in our discussion here, the however many it is, 210 hours or 270 hours of the required agent course requirement, right?
This is Soccer. I think right now, the way it stands, it's 270 hours plus another 630 hours. What Chance was suggesting is that it be a 630 total and nothing else. So that would mean that as an agent, you had 270, and then you had to take another 360 hours within the allotted 4 years, which if you are, I know TREC cannot mandate designations or anything like that, but if you are getting any of those, you get credit quite easily because TREC gives, gives hours for getting designations and things like that. And then you can take courses at your community college or wherever else. So,
I would also add to that just real quickly, if you don't mind, just to get really technical for the math people who are trying to figure out hours. So the proposal I made is 630 total hours. That includes pre-licensing, that includes SAE. But if we're saying 270 hours is what you've got, the reality is by the time somebody reaches 4 years active to be able to apply for the license, they're really going to have at bare minimum 286, sorry, because they will have taken 4 hours of Legal 1 and Legal 2 twice.
So to sort of echo what Chance is saying, in my understanding, in the application for the broker, 180 of those hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 courses that are mandatory courses.
Correct.
What it says. Those are courses that have already been taken if you're an agent. So that if that's part of your 630 hours, why are we discussing that as part of the brokerage requirement? It's gone. I think it's making it very confusing to everybody.
So
let me just say, the only thing that's not that the agent hasn't done and the broker is required to do to sit for the exam is he's got to take the extra 30-hour real estate brokerage course. That's a mandated government. That's what the government says we have to take. And then, and then it said an additional 630 hours have to be qualified. That's in the application deal. So I think the application that I sort of marked up the application from the TREC website so I could sort of follow what was going on. And it looked like it was 900 hours.
It is.
And that's ridiculous.
That's what it is right now, technically.
Right, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can. Let me just say, I couldn't have done it.
So my
I couldn't have done it.
Denise.
So my proposal is 270 hours that you would get from pre-licensing and SAE, and an additional 360 hours.
Which is 12 courses over 4 years, which is 3 courses a year, which is really easy to do if you are actually active and trying to, like we were saying, get a designation or get your broker's license from day one. You know that's what you want to do. You're going to start taking courses that are going to accumulate on your education record. And then when it's time to do the application, you're going to look back and you'll have 650 or even 700 hours. So I'm not
too far away from what you guys are talking about.
Right.
I think we're almost there. I'm talking about 270 hours total after you're an agent. You're talking about 300 hours or whatever it is after you're an agent.
Oh, okay.
So we're not that far apart is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And so 240 of my hours, this is after you're an agent. If you're an agent, you've already got 180 hours put to bed. So we don't need to be discussing the 180 hours, I don't think.
Just to be clear.
Talk about this for just a second so she can give us a staff view and then we can find a place to start and move forward. Vanessa?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was unmuting that time. So what I wanted to say is we brought Denise and Jennifer here so that they can serve as a real reference for you guys whenever you have those questions of, well, wait, do the hours count toward this or that? So please feel free to rely on them and ask them those questions when it does get confusing. I think they can be invaluable in that. And I know they're also going to speak up a little bit later down the road when you guys actually start getting some draft recommendations put to virtual paper, just to go over, if something looks like, hey, that's actually a huge increase. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but if that were to happen, they will weigh in and say, hey, that might not fly with the governor's office because what you've sort of inadvertently done is increase this significantly for college grads versus non-college grads. So they're here to serve as that resource. So 1, please feel free to ask them those questions. And 2, they may start weighing in once you guys start getting a draft response and having, I'm going to turn it back to Leslie because I know that she wanted to move in the direction of let's start getting that draft response now that you guys have reviewed the summaries. It sounds like in a lot of ways, you're not that far apart on a lot of this stuff. So I'll turn it over to Leslie, but I just wanted to say, 1, you have that staff resource, and 2.
Okay, there's some hands up. I'm thinking that it may be best to break this all down in pieces instead of continuously going back and forth. Let's maybe start, let's go back up to Mark's notes above and kind of maybe go through that. And so is everyone in agreement that real estate related courses within maybe X amount of years or however we wanted to do it could go towards hours necessary?
Ask that question again.
Is there a consensus that you could use the real estate related courses or a degree, real estate related degree towards your brokerage hours, but not like a music degree or any other degree. It must be real estate related.
I agree with that statement.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yes.
Do we agree that it should be in however many years we agree upon? Like, could your degree from 30 years ago count?
No.
No.
And do we think that is 5 years enough? Is 10 years enough? What do you believe that to be?
I think 10 years, this is soccer. I think 10 years would be, because if someone got a degree in psychology, but they also were interested a little bit in real estate and they took a finance class and they also took maybe a real estate math class or something, but they practice psychology for 8 years or so, and they have that real estate math class completed, then that could give them credit. But any more than 10 years is too long.
Correct. So does it be a degree, or could it be classes that were taken at an institution, higher learning institution?
I think any classes that were taken, because if somebody's working a full-time job and they are interested in transitioning careers, they could be working 9 to 5 and then going to ACC from 6 to 9 every day for Monday through Thursday. So I think any real estate related class from an accredited institution like a community college or university.
Does anybody else have feelings towards that degree or classes? Does that seem to be the consensus, either one?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, yay.
And I'll keep typing these, but I just wanted to make sure. Did Bob, you've had your hand up a while? I didn't know if your stuff had been addressed yet or not.
Well, it hasn't. I have a quick question, and this is throwing it out of sequence again here, but because it's not just all about education. I mean, the experience, and since they changed the broker, the number of hours that it had to be over the last 10 years, do you keep statistics on where are the complaints coming from? Is it coming from the new brokerage model, or the one that I'm under from 20 years ago that had a different educational aspect to it? And does the commission keep any statistics on that?
I think it's been the same for 20 years. It's been 900 hours since I got in real estate, hasn't it? How long has it been 900 hours? It's been that for a long time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and you can see by the top of my head, I'm a lot older, I guess. But sorry, Chance, yours is a choice, Chance. But part of mine's a choice, but not much of it. No, and here's some personal feelings. I think completely discounting college degrees, and I'll use this example. I love my daughter. My daughter has a college degree, and she's a teacher. And she went out and got a master's degree in something related to education, special ed. And I don't believe that she should get any hours counted towards a real estate degree.
Unless she has a real estate class that she took because
her
dad is.
But she did not.
Okay.
And yet I went out and got a business degree and have an MBA, and I get no credit for working my way through 9 years of college and with 2 kids. And I think that people, if you want to present to the governor's office ease of entry is not telling somebody they have to re-educate. They had all of this and they get no credit for it at all.
That's not what we're saying.
Except for real estate related classes. Now I understand I don't need my geology class or my botany class or whatever I took to transfer, but there are a lot of things that cross over, and if you don't, I still think I use a lot of what I did to run a brokerage. So I think that completely discounting a college degree is giving the wrong message to that segment
To
of
the
the
public.
population that wants to move in for the governor's office or for whoever. I mean, there has to be a little bit of credit, because I know we're going to discuss some other things where I'll say the same thing. There has to be a little bit of credit, but not overwhelming credit. Would I believe today that I should be able to opt out of these things? And the answer is no.
Okay. Unless you had gotten an MBA in real estate finance, and then you would have all of the other courses that we were talking about. So I can understand that.
MBA in real estate finance would mean that I would be working for a commercial investment firm only, and wouldn't be working in general real estate as the broker of a multifaceted office. So it is a specialized thing. So it just yeah. Anyway, now I'll put my hand down for now. There you go.
Did you have something to say?
I'm sorry. Did you ask me that?
Yes, Tony.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Tony Slagle. I'm the Deputy Executive Director. For those of you who have not met me before, I just wanted to touch base on one particular item, which is I've had some experience with the Governor's Division of Regulatory Compliance with the inspector rules, and the way they think about things is they're often amenable to a tightening up of things, so long as it's not a complete tightening up. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to, and you can recommend anything you want, I'm just trying to give you some context here. If you're going to tighten up the degree requirement, putting a time cap on it, because currently there is not a time cap on education. And Denise can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe education is education, and there's no, if you have it, there's no time cap on it. Doing that along with narrowing the type of degree that's applicable may be an issue with that office. I just wanted to give you an indication of that. Again, you can recommend anything that you want to. That's what the purpose of the group is. But I just wanted you guys to understand kind of the way they think about things, and their willingness to see things as not a barrier to entry is all dependent on how what the rationale is, and if it's not something that completely throws a current pathway to licensure out the window. So that's
okay.
all.
Thank you.
Summarize what's going on.
Yes, and I did want to, and I had noticed there's a motion, so we'll probably want to read that in a minute, just sort of general counsel stuff. But I did want to summarize a little bit, and then probably go to Chance to read his motion and Pam's second to do it orally, because the meeting's recorded and we don't really have a great record on the chat side. So we definitely want to get that recorded, and then you can go to the other questions. So what I was trying to do here on this sheet, and I actually did post Chance's motion if you want to read it, it's in the chat, but I tried to post things that we're getting to, and the motion may affect that. What Tony was just saying is this part here. If we get rid of the college degree, make a time limit or limit it or add extra hours, all of those could be barriers to entry. And I mentioned all the kind of hurdles on barriers to entry, not only through this group, through the commission, and through the governor's office and legislation, but also the governor's office has a regulatory and compliance division that was recently created last session, and we have some experience with it, and they're pretty strict on this issue too, and they're either approving or not approving all rules that are going forward. So there's a lot of hurdles if anything's increased on that too. Again, we can go that route. It's just, again, a lot of hurdles on that too. So what I've tried to do here too is, a lot of people said experience. I think the consensus was experience is greater than education, but of course they're related. There did seem to be consensus on lowering the 630 hours to something, either for college graduates or non-college graduates or both. And there was certainly consensus on how we weight real estate degree and other things. Was mentioned the goals to protect the public, which of course is the mission of the Texas Real Estate Commission as well. So I just thought I'd summarize that, and hopefully I got it right. But Madam Chair, there is a formal motion. Perhaps we could have, if it's okay with the chair, to have Chance read that so that we get that reported, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead, Chance.
Okay, and my thought process was, if we just made a motion, we could actually start amending things that we need to do. So, Madam Chair, I would move that this group propose the following: that the 270 classroom hours that are required for pre-licensure and SAE 360 additional classroom hours that must include real estate brokerage and broker responsibility course, and classes taken as part of a real estate program at a college or university or whatever the legal language is for Institute of Higher Learning, may count as part of the additional hours if taken within 5 years.
And I second.
Was that, I had my screen out. Was that Pam?
That was Pam.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because that's all you done it in the chat. And also, I just want to point out for the group too, Commissioner Russell asked about what about schools like Champion, and she also mentioned that University of North Texas, a very fine higher education institution in Denton, has a degree in real estate. Champions, and I'll throw this to, if I may, Leslie, throw this to Jennifer, Denise. I don't think Champions would count on their classes because it's not higher education. They're not an accredited university, although they could certainly give courses that qualify for other purposes. It wouldn't qualify as higher ed, is my understanding.
So Mark, yeah, I'll speak to that. What I'm seeing here from Chance is 360 additional classroom hours that must include real estate brokerage and brokerage responsibility. Those courses can be taken either from an accredited college or university or an approved education provider that offers those pre-licensing courses. And then 3, to me, just clarifies that in addition to 2, if an applicant took courses as part of a real estate program at an accredited or college or university, those could count toward that 360 hours. So you have 2 options. Right?
That was the intent.
Okay.
I call a question.
And who did that?
Yeah, so
Sorry.
open
Soccer.
Excuse
Soccer,
me. Sorry.
She was gonna discuss it.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just meant you've got a motion, but let's open it up to discussion because what
Okay.
Chance has given us here is a set starting place, which is great.
So if we don't have any chance of getting the 5 years or whatever that is, I would totally be okay with amending that motion. You know, that's just not realistic at all, but I would defer to staff on that.
Yeah, then if you want to do a friendly amendment in a second, then I can modify the motion if you wish.
So what I guess the question would be from staff is, what do you think how do you feel like that point 3 should read?
So I'm sorry. This is Tony again. I don't want to discourage you guys from making whatever recommendation you want. I just wanted you to be aware that if this does go before the Regulatory Compliance Division, they may have some issues with it being couched that way. If you remove one or two, one or other of the barriers, i.e. you don't just have it narrowed to real estate, which I think makes some sense, or you don't put the time limit on there, there's more of a chance they'd be amenable to it. But you can recommend it anyway. If they don't like it, they'll bounce it back to the agency is what'll happen. They won't approve the rule.
Tony, I have 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What happens if you take out the word real estate program and put qualifying classes within the last 5 years? If the qualifying classes would have to be what is on our list of qualifying classes.
Yeah, again, I think because, and I'm just going with my experience in dealing with other rules that have gone before them, they would see that as a limitation, since currently we don't have a limit on education. And again, I understand where that particular recommendation is coming from. It makes sense to me to have some sort of currency involved in that, but the governor's office is likely going to see that as a narrowing of which it is, and a possible barrier to entry for people coming out of state or people who've taken their education and taken a break and decided to come into the industry. Just throwing that on the table.
Well, you have one extra.
Madam Chair, I would move to amend the original motion to remove what was just highlighted, if taken within 5 years.
Tony, I have one additional question for you, and I'm not privy to this whole process, and I know we all don't have a crystal ball. But so when I went back and I researched what all of the other states are doing, many do have this type of provision of X amount of years. When things are presented, can you present that research and show that we're not out of line?
No, I don't think so. There's 2 things that are consideration when you're speaking to the governor's office. There's a general request from the governor's office for agencies to look at barriers to entry and getting more in line with what other states do. And then there's this separate division that Mark and I spoke about, which is the regulatory compliance division that was set up last session. And their main goal is to make sure that there's not any regulation coming forward that affects entry into the market. So there's kind of two different things. So the fact that what they're not necessarily looking at other states, what they're looking at is what did we do before, and if we're changing it, how are we making it more of a barrier to entry to come in? And they may look, I'm just saying, I don't know how they'll read it, but I'm just saying they may look at this and say, okay, right now education, no matter when it's taken, is acceptable. You're saying now you're going to limit it to 5 years. They may be okay with that as a reasonable suggestion, or they may say that's really, why are you doing that? And is it something that is necessary if right now anybody can do it? So there's sort of two different things at play here, even though they're going towards the same thing, which is this opening up the marketplace and making it more available to people. Comparison to other states, and then what have we done prior?
So when this is presented, is any backup documentation given, or is it just given as this is what we're requesting or proposing?
Well, Vanessa may be able to speak to a little bit better to that because she presented the last thing that we sent to them.
Well, and I think what Tony's saying is it is two-part, right? So regulatory compliance is looking at any rules that we're going to generate. But I think the governors, if I understand this, I mean, this is my understanding of them, they're looking at the rules, but my understanding is that then there's also the governor's office in general, I'm going to say, that's looking at, they've asked us to not create increases, barriers to licensure. So the process through the regulatory compliance division, I think, is a little bit different because we send them rules and they reject them, and there's a whole dialogue and we come back to you guys. But we do know that we have this general thought from, or directive from the governor's office, which is to reduce those barriers to entry.
Right.
So, we're going to keep saying that because we keep hearing it and we want to make sure that we get somewhere. We get a recommendation that we think can move forward. Does that mean, if you, like what Tony said, if you took out the 5 years or you took out the real estate portion, or whichever one he said, then maybe you get there, right? We're just trying to figure out, we're always going to be poking that hole because that's the one that we keep getting this message on. So I think you're going to see it no matter what, either in legislation or in rules, but they are two separate divisions, if that makes sense.
And I don't want to take away from the fact that you are recommending a lowering of overall education hours in general. So that does play into that. So again, the recommendation may be okay. I'm just raising some questions that they're likely going to ask us about. When we've done this previously, they've actually looked at the whole set of rules, not even things that we've changed. They've looked at said, okay, why does this do this, and asked us to work on rules that we weren't even recommending changing to make it tweaks here and there to comply with their directive. So,
but we Chance recommended actually go in line with the 5 years experience that we already have. So it's the same timeline for the most part.
Yeah. Oh, and I should point out that Chance, I think he's amended his motion, and it was his motion, and then Pam, I think, seconded it. Is that correct, Pam?
Yes.
Just so we get it orally. So
Yeah.
I think before since he made the motion, and I think we can take away the 5 years or put it back, whatever y'all want, obviously. But I think that's what we currently have now is what's I'm highlighting here.
And Leslie, if I can just say one more thing, I apologize for being wishy-washy, but I don't know what the governor's division is going to do. So I'm just trying to give you guys a fuller picture of what the possibilities are.
I get it. It's just hard to know. You don't have a crystal ball, and you want to try for something that you think would be good, and you just don't want it all rejected because of one little thing.
Right.
Oh, I think that's right. I just want to reiterate on the chat function, and I do not mean to be annoying about this, but we really need to try and avoid using the chat unless you are having like technical issues, because we can't record the chat for purposes of open meetings. So you may just have to get in there and amend and I think that's how you did the amended motion. That's fine. But just to reiterate that we can't really record that chat function. So for open meetings purposes and transparency and all the stuff that Mark and I are always going to be talking about, we need to back away from the chat a little bit and put it in the recording. So thank you.
And you've got two hands up, I think.
Dude, Bob, do you want to talk? Bob?
Sorry, didn't know it was up. It's down now.
Bill? Maybe not.
Yes, thank you. So and again, I have questions. I'm really not trying to be an advocate, and I'm not trying to sort of persuade the group one way or the other. I really am trying to make sure that I understand it. In the 360 hours, is that those would be the way that the application process works now, the education hours are now, those are supposed to be qualifying courses, related qualifying courses. And the list on those qualifying courses are very general. They're very open. And it allows for real estate. It has real estate stuff, but it really has writing, math. It's got construction. It's got general business stuff. It's got a lot of stuff if you look at the list of all the items. So if you want to say, I think that we don't have to must include real estate brokerage or brokerage responsibility course. I would say that the 360 additional classroom hours should just be related qualifying courses through a college, university, or some other related trade organization or related real estate organization. And again, the list of items is very broad, and somebody who does have a college degree probably could get credit for a lot of that stuff. And I think that would be more inclusive. I think it would be more easier to accomplish. And the other thing is that education is not timing. If I learned math 20 years ago, I learned math. It doesn't have to be within 5 years. And again, I know I'm being simplistic and it's sort of silly, but the fact is that a basic education that a person has and an experience and a longevity in being around, I think gives you some ability to have credit for an education process, whether you had a college degree or an education course 5 years ago or 20 years ago, as long as it's timely. And I mean, as long as it's valuable, I think that's something we have to give credit to people for. And then going to Yasmin's comment that, this really is sort of almost like the master's or the professional degree. And when you get a law license, it's 90 extra hours. When you get a MBA, it's another 60 to 90 hours. When you get another professional degree, maximum, it's 120 hours. And so those hours, that means how many hours you're really going to be going to class. So I think the hours that we're putting into this thing have to have some bearing to other professional degrees. It's not just a number. And so if you've got qualifying things, I think the number at 120 hours for extra stuff is significant. That's a 4-year degree on something, even if it was 4 years real estate.
Maybe Jennifer.
It's just a point.
From their stance, and let's hear what Jennifer has to say.
Thanks, Leslie. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. This is probably a given everybody understands, but in the proposal or the motion that Chance made, and I'm gonna the 270 hours in classroom coursework are the 180 hours of sales agent pre-licensing plus the 90 hours of SAE. And there is no requirement for any of that to be duplicated. So that I just want to make sure everybody understands. Second, the 360 additional hours that are proposed in this amendment, qualifying courses are promulgated pre-licensing courses that aren't mandated for a sales agent license, but they come in the form of several 30-hour coursework for which TREC provides all of the content. Those include real estate appraisal, real estate law, real estate marketing, math, property management, investments, and residential inspections for real estate agents. So when you refer to 360 additional hours in qualifying coursework, that's primarily where those come from. Now, what Mr. Roth was also pointing out is that there is a list that we currently maintain of courses that course topics that we will now accept as part of the 630 hours of related coursework, which is part of the overall 900 hours that's required right now. We will accept courses in these topics when they come to us on a transcript from an accredited college or university. However, by the language that is proposed in this motion, in my mind, I see that as eliminating this list dramatically only to those courses in a real estate program at a college or university, something like real estate law, real estate finance, course titles that are similar to the other of our currently, elective qualifying courses. So that's the way that I see this, and I don't know if that helps to clarify for anybody, and I don't know if that changes anybody's opinion on this recommendation, but to me it seems pretty clear and clean that all of the additional coursework would need to be related to real estate, regardless of whether you took it from a proprietary school, such as, Champions or the Real Estate Business School or McKissick, or if you took it from a college or university.
So if you take out the real estate program wording and put qualifying, would that make it better, qualifying courses?
I think it's clear just like it is. In fact, I think that removing the real estate, if that's your intent, would be more confusing from a processing standpoint and determining what is and is not acceptable.
Okay.
And I am going to ask Denise if she has any comments or thoughts, because I may not have included everything that she might want to mention.
Yeah, this is Denise Sample, the licensing director. I do want to point out that currently the 630 hours, continuing education that's taken for renewal of the sales agent license will also count towards the 630 hours of related, the related real estate related education. So if that is going to change, that would just need to be clear in whatever recommendation is made.
That would, in the spirit of my motion, that would not change.
Yeah, so so any class that you take that's currently being given credit, such as a CIPS class or any designation class or anything like that, those hours would still count towards the 360, correct, Chance?
In the spirit of my motion, that would be correct. But
Okay.
it could also be a 1 hour lunch and learn for
Correct.
how to use Canva.
Or MLS, yeah. Okay.
Any of those hours that are allowed and given credit by TREC for CE would count towards that 360 hours.
Okay, so basically you're just taking the other, how many, so we have 270 now, and we used to have, it's 270 plus, what did we have before? 560, how much did we have before? 270, 630. So you're just taking the 630 and making it 360, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question or a thought, and it seems like this is, we've talked about this like 3 different times, and it seems like it's just a lot of confusion on the way it's worded, and it's the same thing, but on number 1. when it's 270 classroom hours plus CAE credit, is the same as having your sales license, correct, Denise?
That's correct. Those are the hours that a sales agent who's obtained their license here in Texas and renewed for the first time already has. The only exception I can think of is a sales agent who's been licensed by Trek for 20 years, and maybe they had to take a different set of courses to get that sales agent license.
So, and this pretty much has nothing to do with what well, it does have something to do with what we're discussing, but this has been confusion for everybody. So I guess for Trek or for us, could it say sales licensing equals 270 classroom, just for any sales agent, any broker, anybody out of state knows that it's not being repetitive, but it's one of the same?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a note here to kind of revise that become a broker page of our website, so we can make that a little more clear, because we definitely don't want to convey that you'd have to take all those courses again.
Yeah, okay. Just, yeah, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I think that'll help a lot.
Hello? Can I say something real quick about the licensing hours are also subject to college degree, so you don't necessarily have 180 hours with the 270.
What?
The sheet,
is that correct, Denise?
The sheet I have says if you completed any of the above qualifying real estate courses through an accredited college university for academic credit, submit a transcript for evaluation. So it doesn't necessarily, I don't know how wide that latitude is if you're taking a university course in finance to get real estate finance crossed off that list.
Bob, but you're referring to the sales license, right?
And I understand, but we're referring to a minimum threshold of hours, and this says that some of those hours can be eliminated. Right.
Those requests are not common because it's rare that a college course, once we ask for the course description and the syllabus, will match up to the content requirements laid out by rule for the qualifying course. So that option is there if by chance that course does match up to the content requirements set out by rule. So for the most part, a sales agent license for 2 years, over 2 years, has taken the 180 mandated courses.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Soccer. Are we I call the question. We have a motion, we've discussed it, we've amended it. Now it's time to vote or not vote.
Yeah, and if you do want to call a vote now, Chair, that didn't do like a roll call or go through the people so that we can make sure we get it right on the recording, please. And I can do that for you if you wish.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, so I'll just go through each person. You go aye, nay, or abstain then if you wish. I'll just go down the list. Bob Jacobs?
Aye.
Chance Brown?
Aye.
And I'm writing this down too, okay. Holly Hightower?
Aye.
And Leslie Lerner?
Aye.
Pam Titzel?
Aye.
And Soccer Chapman Thomas?
Aye.
And who? Oh, I put the list here. Oh, Brian is off, and Bill Roth.
I'm going to have to say I'm opposed to it because I don't think the motion is clear enough, and I don't think it's detailed enough, and we've really gone through what we really need to do to present something that is explainable and actionable. And again, I respect the group's approach to try and get something on the table, but I think this is not a well-constructed motion, unfortunately.
Yasmin Perez?
Aye.
Okay, so I've counted 7 ayes and 1 nay.
So motion carries.
Can we discuss the the education that goes along with this. I know both, I think Bill and I said that we thought it was kind of together. So maybe if we discussed everything. Motion?
Are you talking about I'm sorry, just if I can clarify so I keep track of this, are you talking about what courses are required?
No.
Or the experience?
The experience, sorry.
Oh,
the experience.
Yeah, that would be,
Yeah. That's going to be our next topic of discussion.
I know.
I'll pull up that spreadsheet. That'll help.
I was just suggesting if we look at that before we put a motion to, I guess at this point, the motion is denied, right?
No, the motion carried. The motion passed 7-1.
Okay.
And this is just a draft. I mean, they're going to have to put it all together. Staff will put it together for us.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Leslie, which is that, you know, when we met, we talked about, you know, getting a draft recommendation today and then letting everybody sit on it, and then we can bring it up, not for an incredible amount of time at the next meeting, but bring it back up and get to a final recommendation, but let it sit with everybody to think about and mull over. So hopefully that could be really helpful to everyone, including you, Mr. Roth. If you had any concerns about the wording or how it was done, we can all look at that at the next meeting as a shorter agenda item.
Well, and thank you for clarifying that. I didn't understand that this was just a draft for us to put on the table as a working motion that we would then come back to and revisit. I thought this was a motion we're going to be sending to other groups. So if this is just for that let's sort of work off of this template, yeah, then I get it. But I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No.
I thought we were making a decision to ship it off to somebody.
Right. I think we're making I'm going to call it a pre-decision, right? We want to give everybody the opportunity to mull it over, and at the next meeting, you know, dedicate 30 to 45 minutes if necessary to really solidify what you guys want to take to the commission in November. But I think it's probably really helpful because there's just so much to this, right? We've already discussed so much to give us, you know, I think we have 10 days until our next meeting, something along those lines, to sit and think, okay, here's where we got, here are the questions that I've had since then, and not do this all over again. But yeah, let's take this as a first, maybe final draft, and we can look at it at the next meeting. And Leslie and I talked about that yesterday, and she had kind of mentioned it before, but I just wanted to reiterate that.
And you know, I think Bill, especially if staff takes this motion and actually wordsmiths it the way it needs to be wordsmithed, I think it'll probably be a much cleaner thing.
And I really appreciate that, and thank you. And I'm sorry I misunderstood it, but yeah, in that case, I think we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
I guess it's time to move on to experience.
Would you like me to lay that out, the staff recommendation to start?
Oh, absolutely. I was just about to ask that.
Okay, thought so. Yeah, we did talk before the meeting, so I'm not surprised by that. All right. The staff recommendation, we looked at everything that everybody submitted, and of course we focused some on the areas it looked like there was some consensus. I think everyone of the 6 people who submitted recommendations thought there should be more credit for management experience. Some said it could be completely, some said, you know, half or more, but everybody agreed, or at least in the proposals that we read, that there should be more credit for management experience. It also seemed, and though this wasn't like everybody mentioning it, we did agree about dropping credit for representation agreements, which was, I think, you know, sales, buyer representation agreements, listing agreements, dropping that. And then there was some further discussion about the number of years required. There seemed to be a general thought that people who apply for a broker, and this is consistent with what y'all talked about on the education side, is that if you're going to be a broker, you need to be more engaged and maybe not full-time, but certainly more full-time than as a sales agent, which is often part-time or none at all. So they wanted more, basically more experience in this too. So one thing staff did is, instead of saying 4 of the last 5 years, we kept the points the same and said you have to do that in 3 of the last 4 years. So it's basically you have to be a little bit more engaged. Maybe that's about a sale one transaction per quarter, so it's still not onerous at all. We're also cognizant of what we keep mentioning over and over and over about we don't want to increase the increase barriers to competition. The argument would be, well, if we're lowering education, at least for non-college graduates, we think experience is more important, so we're going to increase that. So that's the basic thing. And then let me make sure I mentioned everything there, and you can see it here on the screen. So we were recommending up to basically half experience on the management, so basically 40 points per month. And we also were going to, and this is something Denny Sample has brought up, is that do an experience audit system as well, so that we could check to see if we're saying experience is more important. We need to check to see that people are doing what they say they're doing. So that's basically the staff recommendation. Again, the 5 of us discussed this. We were like y'all. We had lots of different ideas and just sort of kind of reached at this in the process of discussion. So this is just for discussion purposes.
So, Mark, maybe we can get some of this smaller stuff, or not smaller, but some of the stuff we're already in consensus on out of the way, and then focus on the others by maybe starting with, do we all agree that there should be an increased credit for management experience? So
I agree.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a comment on that. So what if I have a husband and wife team and I'm the husband and that's my management versus somebody that's running an office of 50 to 75 people as a manager, and we're giving the same number of points to each person?
And how are you going to audit that?
And how are you going to audit that? Because that's an awful lot of what I see. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there, and the teams consist, it's not always somebody running a business and running something. Teams are of convenience. There's a lot of reasons for teams that don't require much management, and and they're going to get points on this. And so I don't have an answer how to monitor it, but I do know that there is a big difference.
There were some recommendations from different people, so maybe we can go through the recommendations and then go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I agree with you, Bob.
Chance, you want to start off?
Sure, yeah. So mine was really, really simple. It was move the points. I think I'm, again, option 2 there, is move the points up to 5,000. And essentially get rid of listing agreements and buyer reps on all of the categories: commercial, residential, and farm and ranch. And so that was really the simple part, was just striking those out and increasing the points to 5,000. I did put in my proposal that I think that we need to have brokerage branch office or team management increase in points, or remove the maximum that's on there, or like Bob said, adopt a scale that you get more points per number of agents, and that might be 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 50, something like that. I was, in the course of the last part, the education part, I talked to Rita Santa Maria and Byron Underwood at Champion School. And Byron, for those of y'all who may or may not know, used to be the director of professional development for Coldwell Banker United, which is now NRT. And the guy who ran Coldwell Banker United, overseeing $5 billion of real estate sales a year in the state of Texas, couldn't get a broker's license, which is kind of crazy. So that was my proposal, was just clean up the listing representation agreements, the buyer reps, up the points to 5,000, and adopt something new, more points for management.
Thank you, Holly.
Okay, can you hear me?
You
All right. Well, my proposal was to up the points to 8,000. increasing the managers, team leaders, supervisors from 20 to 200 points per month up to no more than 7,200. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So up to 7,200 max, which would still allow for 800 points that they have to do something in line with a sale or purchase. And I think that raising that would allow more activity. The experience is there, and that's what's necessary in order to be a broker, is the experience, so that you can oversee what's going on, tied in with the education side of it. So that's my proposal.
So, and then mine, I totally changed it up. So I took it, I kind of did a different scale, and I went down to 100 points just to kind of streamline it and make it a little bit more simple. Because I remember one of our first meetings, somebody talked about how confusing our scale is. And so I went back to 100 points, and I also said that you had to work an average of 30 hours per week in 4 of the last 5 years in this real estate business, which also had a proposed form for a broker or brokers to sign off on. And then when multiple license holders are involved in a transaction, such as a team, the broker or delegated supervisor determines who receives the points. When they're unable to allocate the points, only the person on the contract receives the points. So, and then with this 100-point system, the applicant must have at least 4 residential or farm and ranch sales, or 2 closed commercial transactions during each of the 4 out of 5 years. And then pretty much on my sheet, I broke down how right now, I guess it's 2.4 closed residential transactions, and I upped it to 4. And then pretty much streamlined the whole experience sheet. I think Mark has it over there, but it was just took out farm and ranch and residential are pretty much the same, improved and unimproved properties. It took out listing agreements like we discussed earlier, and it just really streamlined the process so it's not as confusing. I don't know if y'all can all see it, but it's just a totally different thing. You may have seen it in your work before. So, Brian, are you ready? Oh, he left. So Brian had 3,600 points, and he had 3 different tracks.
That was actually, I think that's mine.
Oh, that's
actually mine.
Bill, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Is it my turn? Okay. What I had suggested was, I like the idea that you have some experience, and I think the existing experience requirements is probably okay. Maybe they can be tweaked. Maybe it can be different points for different things, but to have a base level of experience for the last 4 out of 5 years, I think is legitimate. But what I wanted to suggest is that that you should be credited for other experience, or just being in the industry, being involved in the industry, and getting some credit for longevity in the industry. And I know it sounds sort of unusual, but I think that if somebody has been around for a long time and has a license, they should be given some kind of credit for that activity level, or that ability to maintain their license. Remembering that we all have MCU requirements, we all have requirements to keep up. To the extent that somebody is working in the industry and has has a license, but they're doing management or they're doing support stuff. They may not be actually selling stuff, but for us to have to figure out how many transactions they did, what they're doing, and to get into the weeds, I think is a very difficult thing to monitor. So my idea was give people credit for longevity. And if you've been an agent for 10 years, that's should be good enough. And then number 3, if somebody can't achieve the experience requirement, why don't we have sort of a super education requirement to offset that? If somebody can't get all the education done, I mean all the experience done, then you got to do more. You got to get some extraordinary education requirement to qualify you for being the broker. Again, this has to do with being able to sit for the exam. Okay, the last part of it is I thought that also we should give applicants credit for other professional licenses. What are we trying to accomplish here in qualifying a broker? We're trying to get people that are able to manage people, have a certain degree of professionalism, having the skills to do problem solving, etc. In other words, it's not all about just real estate. How much, and I think that if you have a professional license, law, CPA, mortgage broker, insurance, arbitrage, I don't know what it would be, and even non-Texas brokers should get some credit for having gone through the pain and suffering of going to school, getting a license, having experience related to all of these things that are connected to some extent to the real estate business. And then the last thing is, there is a provision in the law, I think, that says under the military exemption for brokerage, that there's a mechanism for the Texas Real Estate Commission to provide a waiver of some sort if you can't meet all the requirements. Now I know it's in the military, it's an easy idea, but maybe there should be even a 4th category that says, you know what, there should be a process to allow somebody who can't meet all the education, meet all the experience, if there's an extraordinary deal, that the Real Estate Commission should have some process, or a body that's designated by the Real Estate Commission should be able to have a third path besides education and experience, but a third path to brokerage licensing that would be somewhat discretionary, but that would be that would allow for an extraordinary situation, like the situation that was just brought up, where a person has been working he's got 5, has been working on millions and billions of dollars worth of real estate, and he doesn't qualify for any of the particular check the boxes. Those were my comments.
Okay, Martin, Brian's gone.
I believe so. He had to, I think, catch a flight.
Yasmin?
Yes, my recommendation was a little bit different, just because when I was thinking about everything, I kind of made it be one of the same with education. So my idea was kind of to leave the hours that we have of 36, the points of 3,600, but to create 2 groups, which would give. So group A would be somebody that has management experience or managing experience of sales agents. So that requirement be to have 3+ years of supervising managing agents, and they have to be listed as the listed supervisor. And they would also have to be taking that broker's responsibility course, which is a mandate now in order to be a supervisor. If a person fell into this category, then their education hours would be reduced. I had suggested about 340 total, but that was based on my 500. So we could just some sort of a reduction in hours for having this experience and actually managing agents. And then group B would be somebody that has no management experience, and they would take no credit for any hour. So my suggestion was based on the initial discussion of how do we eliminate education or lower education when somebody has the experience. And that's pretty much it.
And just so if I could summarize Brian's real quick, his is right here. I'm sort of highlighting it. So he definitely wanted to increase the points pretty significantly. He said from 10 to 12,000 points, and agreed with a lot of the proposals here about increasing credit for management experience.
Does Mark or Tony, do you want to talk about any of this before we move forward to give us some direction?
Well, yeah, if I may, this is Tony Slagle again. Just the same concerns that anything that's going to be seen as an increase is likely going to run into some concerns from the Governor's Office of Regulatory Compliance. Again, I don't know what they're going to say, but taken in whole with a reduction in education hours, may be seen as okay if it's couched in we're increasing the experience and lowering the education, and it may be seen as a wash. I don't know, but any really significant increase in the experience points probably will, they would raise some concerns about that.
Did we reach consensus? And I actually sure because there were some concerns raised about the management experience, and I guess the concerns seemed to be on how to audit it or verify it, but I didn't really hear anyone saying it was a bad idea. Just it was maybe hard to implement.
Well, and I think it's worth asking Denise if she's still on the call about that, because if that's something that's difficult for staff to do, and the committee or the working group believes it's important to distinguish between the type of management experience, then I think you as a decision makers are recommending to the decision makers need to know kind of what we can do on our end and whether or not that's even feasible.
Yeah, I'm Denise Sample, Director of Licensing. I'm still here. Thank you, Tony. I think what is worth mentioning is that, it would be difficult to kind of confirm whether or not that applicant has management experience, because what we find with the delegated supervisory designation is that it carries over if a sales agent switches from one broker to another. And so we do run into situations where the sales agent was not aware that they were still flagged as a supervisor and come to us with concerns when their renewal is tied up because they need to take broker responsibility course, as Yasmin mentioned, but they were unaware. So that could be a harder method, just a little more difficult method to track how much supervisory experience they have. It would be easier to rely on what they're submitting and claiming as the experience, the way they do now with the other experience on the report when they apply. And I will mention that totally shifting to another method of like another point system might take a little bit longer to implement because of all the various forms and letters and all the templates that would have to change to shift over to a new point system. Not that it's not something we couldn't do, but that might take a little bit longer to implement from a processing standpoint. So just to put that out there.
Does everyone agree about taking off the representation agreement?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So we have our first recommendation. Great. Remove representation agreements.
And listing agreement.
And listing, okay.
Yes.
So
call.
Madam Chair, can I ask a quick question? And Mark, maybe you can explain to me, because I'm trying to take what Tony said and process it. In the staff recommendation, you're saying that the 3,600 points would have to be earned in 3 years as opposed to 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
So essentially, it kind of does what my proposal does, which is you just got to do it faster.
Somebody in our meeting was clever on that, but yes. I don't
Yeah.
remember who.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the thought there, from staff's point of view, was it tightens up the experience to a certain extent, but it's, again, trying to find that balance of what would be acceptable to the governor's office.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost thinking that the staff recommendation should be the motion.
Me too. This is Soccer.
I'm a little bit concerned that, again, 3 years is, that's a short period of time in this world. And it would seem to me that if you want to make it a little bit more easy and more broad and more flexible for folks, that we should make sure that it is 5 years. Give people enough time to do what they need to do and give time for experience. This is experience. It takes time to do something. You can't jam experience into a short period of time. And I think that if you want to give people the incentive to do things and allow them the opportunity to grow within the profession and have more expertise, you got to give them time to do it. That's just my feeling. I think we're headed the wrong direction by making it tighter. It should be more flexible.
Is Chelsea still on the call by any chance?
Sorry, who?
I am on the call.
Okay.
I thought you were
It took me a minute. I'm listening and learning.
I'm not meaning to put you on the spot at all. I'm just trying to remember in our first meeting, you had said something about looking over the experience report, and I don't remember where we were going with that in our first call.
You know, I think it was only to just examine, whether the current experience requirement is appropriate or if it should be toggled. That's all. So I think this conversation is exactly what we're looking for, to just talk through what's appropriate. And I'm the least qualified to say. I mean, you as practitioners would know.
So going back to, I think, what Denise said, and I completely, totally understand. To me, when looking at our form, it is kind of confusing. And I don't know if all of you agree. And that's the only reason I went down to a different point system. And it is kind of the same thing, but it's just not 300 points for this or 300 points for that. So I was just trying to make it a little bit simpler way of reporting, I guess that is.
I think that's good. I think you are not the only one that finds it confusing at all. So simplification would be encouraged.
Does the motion allow us to sort of consider expanding experience for other things other than those specific listed ideas for having extra? And again, I'm not advocating for it. I just want to make sure that we're not missing it. That without being specific as to experience, should we give credit to folks who have backgrounds, who have diverse experiences that could be bringing talents to the group and that may not be able to get qualified otherwise. In other words, it doesn't negate the experience 3,600 hours, but it allows, supplements it, or it allows another alternative if somebody can't achieve those numbers for any reason.
Can you give an example of what that might look like, Bill?
Yes, that was the last part. An example.
A person who's basically not really actively selling real estate, a person who's administrative primarily, a person who's who's coming into the industry with a great diverse background, but can't meet the 5-year requirement in getting all the experience, and they got to sit out for a long time.
Bill,
A
I have
guy
a
who's
question
been
for
a
you.
guy who's been in business for a long time, and you know what, he does, the experience is, the question is, does the guy have the ability to understand real estate? That's what you're trying to accomplish here, is to qualify a person's ability to understand the industry.
Bill, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So based on what you're saying that it's more of the ability for somebody to understand the business, but if somebody's a broker, they have the right to manage and hold other people's licenses, therefore they're responsible for them. Do you not think it's important for them to know the true in and out of the business in order to help those people know what's going on with the business? My concern with shortening this or making it be like if you had 10 years, what the market was 6-8 years ago is not what the market is now. So do you think, or do you see that there's a possibility that we would be hindering even the consumer by not having that experience recently? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and it's a great point, Yasmin. I think that part of what the broker does, it's their managers, their mentors, their guidance, they're providing experience. It's not just being able to say, this is how you fill out the contract. And I'm not trying to be, to drill it down to a very simple thing, but there's more to being a broker. And a person who's been in the industry for a long time, who's done stuff, again, I think there's a certain amount of experience that we can't quantify, but that's there. And again, it's not the only criteria. This is part of a group of requirements: education, passing a test, having a background, getting your agent's license, and then having continuing education requirements and continuing responsibilities in the future for professional development. So I think as a part of the overall pot of stuff that's we're cooking here, I don't think it has to be. It doesn't have to be so dramatically specified. And I think you got to give credit for folks, credit for what folks have done in their lives.
Okay.
I'm mostly in residential real estate. I'm not even going to claim I'm part of commercial. But the reason I even wanted to get into this group is I have seen a lowering of the standards of real estate agents in general. And it really concerns me of where our value is going, and decreasing any sort of experience or requirements to be a sales agent or a broker is a huge concern for me, because there's already technologies already taking over part of our job, and lowering our value and dealing with what I have been dealing with in the last several years is very concerning.
I agree.
This is soccer. I agree 100%. Yep.
Too.
Leslie, could I say something?
Sure.
Yeah. I thought sort of focus us a bit here is maybe make a motion, and it could be anything y'all want. This was mentioned, but a motion has not been made yet. So it could be with the current requirements, as Bill stated, of 4 of the last 5 years. It could be 3 of 4. If it's 4 of the 5, we would get rid of this highlighted part. And then after that motion, then I think it'd be a good time to address alternate tracks like the professional licenses, of being a sales agent 10 years, or any other things. But if you got this piece taken care of, then you could add the alternate tracks to that if that's acceptable to the group.
Hey, Mark, before we make that motion, can we add to there where you have give greater credit, 40 points per month for management experience? I would take my personal opinion is there should be no cap on it.
Okay. Yes, whoever reads the motion can do 3 or 4, 4 or 5, drop the part I struck through, drop the highlighted, or modify it however you wish. But I did add that.
But does anybody Does anybody feel like that you should have X amount of hours a week or full-time or?
How are you going? That's going to be that's going to be an auditing nightmare. How can Trek monitor how many hours that someone has worked? That's going to be very difficult. They're just going to say they did it or something?
No, it would have to go back to the broker attesting.
Okay, but then how many brokers here have their agents and know whether or not their agents are working 30 hours or their agents are working 60 hours? I mean, because the hours of work does not equal the success. It's the actual contracts and doing the work that determines whether or not the person has any points on the scale that we currently have, because they could get those points working open houses for 2 weekends in a row for a house that has not gone on MLS yet, and then get 4 sales or something, and they worked 6 hours.
Full-time or part-time, because if someone's working another job and doing this on the side, they're not full-time.
Right.
I agree with Parker. I don't think the points, that's a nightmare. I'm against that personally.
Would it be more useful if the motion was a little bit broader without us getting into specifics of how many hours, I mean, how many points and what the maximum is to basically, sort of allow us to craft the motion that could then be worked in a subcommittee and we could sort of drill down into specifics and make it a more, detail. We could sort of get into the weeds later, but what we're trying to do is sort of get a concept of what the big picture is. And I would like to ask that the motion be amended to allow for alternate tracks as a broad statement that we could then discuss. Again, this is a draft that we're going to be revisiting, and I'd like to put that in there that we could then sort of think about it and try to see if we can bring that back to the group in more detail later.
Bill, the thing is we only have maybe 35 minutes next time to reel it in. It has to be done. So it's not something that we're going to continue to talk about at every meeting.
Leslie, can you repeat that? You cut out.
I said, this isn't something that we can continue to talk about at every meeting. We may have like 45 minutes to take the draft and tweak it if we feel so next time, but it's not something that's going to take a whole meeting's worth again.
Madam Chair, are you okay if I make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would move that the requirement, the education hours remain 3,600, 4 years active practice in the last 5 years, remove credit for representation agreements, give greater credit, 40 points per month for management experience without a cap. There you go.
I second. This is soccer.
Okay, so let me make sure I get it right here. I'll edit it. So Chance and the second by Soccer. And I'll send both of these draft motions, whatever it ends up looking like to everybody as well. So 4 years in the last 4 years, we struck the 1,800.
So
that also makes this part.
Keep it the way it is. Remove those items.
Okay.
Chance?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're just saying keep it as it is, but remove those items, like listing agreements and representation agreements?
4 years active practice, previous 5 years, 3,600 total points. Remove credit for representation agreements. Give greater credit, 40 points per month for management experience with no cap. And then, I mean, I don't know what expanded experience audit system means, but sure.
Do you think that 2.4 sales a year in the last 5 years is enough?
No. 2.4. It's not 2.4. Actually, it is. How many is it? 3,600 is 12. 3,600 is how many per year? Is it 9?
Residential.
That's 3 for residential. Yes, yeah. For residential, it'll be 3. transactions a year?
In the 5 years, though, if it's 300 times 5, is it 300 times 5 for the 5 years? It's 2.4, I believe.
For the last 5 years.
It's 4 of the last 5, so you actually look at the 4. Let me see. So they're actually going to look at the 4. So say if somebody was a manager and then they decided to become a salesperson, then and they start selling in their year 5, and then they go again for 4 more years and they're selling, and then by the last in year 9 you look back 4 years and they 4 of the last 5, and they would have had to have 3,600 points. And so residential points, that's what, not 300 per sale.
In 5 years, though, it could be in 2.
It's 4 of the last 5. So 4. So they're actually going to look at the 4. So if they do, so they have to go from the 4th year, like if today is the year 2000 all the way to 2024. And then once I start the 5th year, which would be August 27th of 2024, then that would be 4 of the last 5 years. So I'm here, and you look at it, would be basically three a year for 4 years.
Mark, Denise, is that how it's counted? Because like if I'm looking at the form, it says year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then it all adds up to the total points earned. So you could have something year 1, nothing year 2.
Oh, I had an agent who went through that, and to get her broker's license, and you can't do all of your work the last year. You can't just sit for 3 years and then go, I'm turning it on now, and get all of it in the last year. It has to be production throughout the 4 years, and unless that's changed since, say, a couple of years ago. That's what I've experienced with an agent wanting to get her broker's license. She had to go a whole nother year because she didn't have any production in one of her first 18 months.
Denise, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I think this is based on what the way the statutes and the rules are laid out, which Mark might be able to help with that explanation. But yeah, it's 4 years of active experience, and the 4 years have to be obtained in the last 5 years. So you could have in some of those categories years 1, 3, 4, and 5 where you got those types of points. It can all be distributed somewhere over those 5 years, but it's a total of 4 years of experience.
Okay.
So you can have 2.4 sales a year to add up to your 3,600 points for the 5 years.
Sorry, say that again.
So you can have 2.4 sales, I guess, or whatever it is, over the 5 years to add up to your 3,600 points.
Right.
Okay.
Let me make sure I understand. You could have it all done in 1 year if you wanted to.
No,
as long as it was
you can't.
As long as it was in the past 5 years.
No. It's 4 years of total active experience laid out by that point system in the last 5 years. So you could have the 6-month period that you took off, or a year that you didn't work, as long as you have 4 years of total active experience laid out by those points, and it's not more than 5 years old. Maybe that's a different way to say it that makes more sense.
Right. So you couldn't have your license and for 3 years do nothing at all, and then try on the 4th, like 18 months or something, decide to get all of your production, because the year 2008, 17, 18, and 19, you did nothing. And then 2020, you did all of the production. Your time would start from 2020 and go forward.
So my question is, why?
Because that's the way it's written.
Well,
because
the reason I'm asking why, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, I really am trying to understand. Experience is transactions. Whether you do 1 a year or whether you do 4 in 1 year, what difference does it make? And we're talking about experience. We're talking about proof of ability to accomplish stuff. If you are managing if you're doing whatever you're doing, again, if you're sick for 2 years, and you decide to do it all the next year, what difference does it make? I don't understand it. And again, and when I say I don't understand it, not in a bad way, but I think that how do people accomplish this if it's a bad economic year, if they're learning the business and the first 3 years they're really learning it, or they're trying to figure it out and they don't hit the stride until the market is ready, or until they have a better ability. Again, why not give people the opportunity to succeed? Don't put more roadblocks. Anyway, that's my.
I think the whole point of this, Bill, is for people to actually be active in the business, because I remember when the rule was all you had to do was have your real estate license for 2 years. And then if you had, engineering degree, you could sit for your broker's license without having any proof of experience whatsoever. And so the rule changed. I can't remember when it changed, that it became 4 years, and you had to have points to prove that you were actually selling real estate and actually, managing or working with tenants or whatever. And that's when it changed, because I have a very good friend. She worked for the state for like 20 some years. She had a real estate license and she was a broker, but she'd call me all the time to ask me questions about FHA financing, because she wasn't actually active in real estate. She was working a full-time job at the state of Texas and would do a deal ever so often. And I think that's the whole point of adding the points for, she got her license under the old way. If she were trying to get her license now, she wouldn't qualify, because she doesn't have the production to go along with it. I think that that was the whole point of changing it.
I think so too.
And thank you, Sakura, for explaining it. I have to tell you all, I'm the poster child for the old way. And I could not get my license today, and I wouldn't go and get my license today under these circumstances, because it's too difficult. It's too hard. And I tend to think that a person who's going to be successful in the business, once you get the license, you're going to decide if you're going to be successful, whether you're going to maintain it, whether you're going to go forward. And again, I just would caution the group, please don't make it restrictive. Let's make it a club that everybody can easily join. And then they have to pay the dues, they have to learn the business, and they have to demonstrate integrity and professional responsibility and ongoing proficiency after they get it. So that would just be, but I'm telling you, I'm that guy that you all were talking about. And I've got a pretty successful group, and I don't think I'm the exception. I think I would be considered an opportunist and part of the rule.
Bill, but why? What do you think is the hard part? Just having the
doing 4 deals a year. That's not hard.
No, that's what I'm asking.
What you all don't understand is it's all together. It's all about trying to put so many hurdles into the process. In other words, I know everybody's trying to say we want everybody coming in as a broker to be absolutely perfect and ready and ready to go, but most professional licenses aren't like that. When you get your
yes, they are.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
1,800 clock hours.
No,
1,800 clock. It's 1,800 clock hours to get your hair cut, Bill. 1,800. I know. I understand you're an attorney, but you said most professional licenses. I mean, 1,800 hours is.
What I'm trying to say is, and I'm not arguing the issue about the hours. What I'm arguing about is that even attorneys, when they get their license, still have continuing education. They still have to learn the business. They still have to produce a modicum of experience afterwards. So just by getting the license doesn't mean you're absolutely ready to go. And so I'm not
That's what we're
saying that
saying.
it's not good to have, it's great to have experience and education, but I don't think it's absolutely the end all stuff. And I'm just saying, give people flexibility. Again, I respect everybody's opinion, and I really do value the feedback, because it's a different, these are all great ideas, and whatever comes out of it, we're going to do the best we can. And I'm not opposed to it. I'm just wanting people to think about something different.
Are we ready to
Call the question.
discussion?
Yeah.
Yasmin, did you have something to say? Oh, okay. Okay, are we ready to vote, or does somebody else have
Yes.
something to say?
I call the question.
Yes.
Yes.
Mark, do you want to read the motion?
Yes, I'll read the motion. I'll go down it. And I don't want to prolong this any, but a chance did make the last part of the motion expand audit experience system, because that was a staff recommendation. Denise, are you comfortable like just explaining what was meant by that part? Because
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So our current process is to review the experience report for the number of years and match that up with the transaction listing that corresponds to the experience listed on the report. We go year by year and, count up the number of transactions. It is a bit of a limited review because the staff on my team doesn't have the industry knowledge to know, on the transaction listing, what all that might entail or anything like that. We do check to make sure that the sponsoring broker at the time that's signing off on that portion of the experience was sponsoring that agent at the time. So that's kind of the check that we do. So what we, kind of were proposing was maybe forwarding a percentage, we tossed around the idea in our meetings, forwarding a certain percentage of applications that experience had been met and education had been met, and they're ready to be issued their authorization letter to sit for the exam, send those over to someone possibly on the enforcement division staff who could review it, since they've got the skill set to kind of review the types of experience that's being claimed on that report. And, we came up with that 10% number because that's kind of the model that we used previously in with the appraiser side and appraiser experience and continuing education. It was 10% of the applications received in a certain time forward over to the enforcement division. So that's where we were headed with that. We receive about 165 initial broker applications per month. That's based on data that's been collected over the last 6 months. So that the 10% would amount to about 16 applications per month that, someone on the enforcement team possibly could review, just to validate that experience. So,
yeah, and that kind of recommendation is just really a manager recommendation. So as y'all are recommending that staff do that, I mean, we already have the authority to do that, but we'd prefer that, an official body kind of direct that a little bit more. That doesn't require statutory change, I don't think, but that's something we'd have to research and see if we do need to do that. So that'll just get us going on that. So would you like me to call the roll now?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the motion, and I'll just go ahead and read it again. Motion by Chance, second by Soccer. 4 years active practice in previous 5 years. That's existing requirements. Also, the 3,600 points remains the same. Remove credit for representation agreements. Give greater credit, 40 points per month for management experience, and expand experience audit system. Signify when I call your name, and I'll try to keep it informal. Either yes, no, or abstain. Bob Jacobs.
Aye.
Okay, Chance.
Aye.
Holly.
Aye.
Leslie.
Aye.
Soccer.
Aye.
Yasmin.
Aye.
Bill.
Okay.
Okay. Wait, is that a yes? Is that a yes? Okay, you're messing with me. That's good. I like that. Pam.
Yes.
Yes, and I think Brian's out, but I'll say his name. I don't see him on, so Brian's out. Okay, so we have eight yeses and no no's. So my understanding, based on what General Counsel said earlier, is I'll put this proposal. It's already in writing, but I'll send that to y'all, and then I guess you'll get another chance at the next meeting to clarify points or change things. So this is sort of a preliminary recommendation that you'll have before you September 9th.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we're on to our next agenda item, which is discussion and possible action regarding comments received on other broker responsibility working group items since the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments? I know we got 2 emails. One really pertained to what we talked about today, the college degree or no college degree. And then the other one pertained to language about the broker response time of 2 days.
And I'll put those up on the, I'll put that email back on the screen. Okay.
The broker response time, we just changed that a little over a
Yeah.
year ago and brought it
Yeah.
down to 3 days.
I can tell you when I read it, which is a little bit different, on this email, they were talking about the word respond to, and there was confusion over that. But it says a broker or supervisor delegated under subsection E. So what if the broker doesn't know that the agent, the sponsored agent, has not responded? So that's where it's confusing to me. But this one is the person that emailed said the word respond doesn't know what the word respond means. Respond means to respond to some form of question communication, either a call, email, text, etc.
Yeah. That's what respond means.
But the person thinks license holders are saying, does that mean simply respond to an offer being submitted? To me, you can respond and say, thank you for submitting, or just acknowledging it, but.
Yeah, I mean, we have every opportunity and every device and gadget around. I mean, 48 hours is not too much to ask someone to respond to the receipt of something.
I agree.
Yep. Well, mostly what he was asking about, not so much the time frame, because I did talk to Scott Hilton. He's on ESAC. I did discuss it with him. He wasn't concerned so much with the time. He said that agents didn't know what response meant on that, so he was concerned because it's kind of a general term. And then my conversation with him was basically the fix sometimes introduces new ambiguities. So here's what his proposed language. I don't know if that's, improves or not, but it's before the group on with y'all. But I don't think it was the time frame. Is more he wanted to know what respond means or respond to what. So, in which y'all kind of already discussed.
Mark, can you raise that a little bit up on the screen?
Yes, I think so. Let's see. There. Is that better?
So my ambiguity on here too is it says broker or supervisor. How do they always know that their agent hasn't responded?
That's our duty as a broker. You have to know where your agent.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And if I send someone an offer and it's been a whole day and I send them another notice, email, or text, and I still don't get it, then as an agent or a broker, you contact the broker and say, I sent an offer and I haven't gotten any response and it's been a day and a half. And they need to respond to us according to TREC within 48 hours after I send it. I mean, come on, man. I guess that's how you would do it, but I don't know.
And at that point, that starts the clock. So with soccer as the broker. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like people being responsible, but oh well.
I know, but we're in real estate.
They're not, believe me.
I know they're not. That's why I'm laughing.
Broker, I'm like the bad person.
So I like this. I like the addition of the word requests, because I don't know about y'all, but I get about 75 email flyers a day. And in theory, that could be a communication that I should have to respond to within two days.
It's actually only if it's a client or one of your sponsored agents or another license holder representing a party.
That's right.
Yeah, so like the flyers, that stuff you don't. And just also is just, too, and this is what I discussed with him as well, is you're right, absolutely right, Chance. You get a lot of stuff, it's easy to miss something. But I can tell you on an enforcement point of view, it has to be something material. It's not just, hey, are you available for lunch in 2 days? That's something always in prosecution. You have discretion to be reasonable and common sense on that. So it's really more like when you don't pass on an offer, or what we saw in enforcement, there was a person in a pending deal, they went out of the country for 2 weeks off the grid. That was pretty straightforward, violation.
Oh, wait, and this only pertains to the real estate transaction, it says. Is that what
I'll go down.
the language said up there at the top? A broker or supervised delegated must respond to sponsored sales agents, clients, and license holders representing other parties in a real estate transaction within 2. So that is explained in there.
Yeah.
Mark, let me ask, the other part of this ambiguity is that, so say there is a complaint to the enforcement people about communication. Does that mean that this is written in such a way that it bypasses the agent ignoring it and goes straight to the broker?
Yeah, for that rule,
that the sales agent has any responsibility to respond to communication from clients and or license holders or other sales agents.
Yes, the license, they have responsibility, but this is the broker responsibility rule, so it's only directed at the broker, just because that's where that is in this rule. But absolutely, a license holder a sales agent blowing someone off too would get in trouble as well, but not under this rule. It'd be a different.
Okay, because if they blow them off, they're sure not going to tell their broker that they're doing that, and so the broker would not know.
But if let's say it's two agents talking to each other, which is what we hear a lot. We always see the bad stuff, or used to always see the bad stuff in enforcement. So a sales agent emails another sales agent, they don't get a response. If they're smart, they go to the broker, because once they go to the broker is probably aware of the rule and is going to be, I want to respond. So that's what they should do to kick that in.
Gotcha.
Because we've had offers just kind of sitting out, and so I've gone broker to broker because I've contacted the agent. The agent didn't call back, and then I went broker to broker, and miraculously, something happens when you talk to the broker.
Is that actually written in a rule for sales agents too? That's not under broker responsibility?
I don't think it's I was actually thinking on my feet here. I don't think there's a bright line 2 calendar day rule, but I might be forgetting it. But it would be a violation if you don't respond, like either negligence or just a general standard of care. But I don't recall if there's a bright line 2-day rule. So, and just so you'll know your options here, you can, and you get lots of comments anytime you're on a committee. Sometimes they can be dozens. I mean, Commissioner Russell probably gets lots and lots of emails and comments. So you don't have to take action on this. You can propose a change to the rule, make a recommendation. You can do it exactly as Scott suggested. You can modify it. So you have all sorts of options before you, but don't feel you have to take action either way on this. It's just up to y'all what you want to do. But I think this did fall within the this committee's jurisdiction.
Does anybody want to take action?
I don't want to change it. I mean, I don't think adding requests to that does anything that just the words respond to all communication by. I mean, what is all communication? All communication. When you add requests, then they're going to start wanting to put emails or texts or blah, blah, blah. So all communication is all communication. I don't think we need to add requests, because if I'm sending you communication, by definition, that communication is about a transaction, according to this, a transaction, a client, or license holder. I'm sending you communication. So I need to respond to it as it relates to the real estate transaction within 2 days. I don't think we need to add it. So.
Well, I think the substance of the letter had to do with, does that just mean got it?
Right.
Yes. That's a response.
Yeah, to me, that's a little less.
But that's a response. Hello, I received it. I will be meeting with my seller at 5 o'clock tomorrow or whatever. Okay, I got it. You responded. You can't, they can't say later on if something happens, the broker nor the agent can say, I never got it, because then the other side has something that says they received it.
I mean, I agree with that.
I agree.
My question is, I have a question is, and maybe you mentioned it and I just didn't hear it. Is this a big issue with the Real Estate Commission? Are you getting a lot of consumer or agent questions regarding this? Is this something that's even on the It's on anybody's mind that this particular issue?
It
Is this a
has not
big
come
deal?
up before. Scott's an educator, and I do respect him. He says he gets it from his students, so you know that part I assume he's getting more than once on that, and that's why he raised it. But I've not heard that before, other than that. But I do respect Scott's opinion.
Then my recommendation is it's not something for us to have to spend time on.
I agree with Bill.
Okay. Okay, so is there anything other than we've talked about in the past about apprenticeship, military, and and everything that Mark and the staff are going to write up for next time? Is there anything that people are looking for on for future agenda items? So then our next meeting is in a couple weeks, September 9th at 1 o'clock. And I believe, doesn't the agenda have to be posted by the end of this week or next week?
I think it's by Fridays. We usually do about 10 days before.
Okay. So
we have a draft agenda. Let me see if, let me just glance at it real quick, because I think we will add the follow-up on these two things we discussed today, the two big things. And what we thought is we'd go to a broker mentorship, internship, apprenticeship program, and then reciprocity would be the two next big issues. But y'all can go a different order if you want to do military spouse, I guess is sort of related to reciprocity. But if y'all want to go a different direction than those two, we'll of course do that.
And then we'll review what they come up with, but we can't spend the whole meeting on that as well. So anyway, so if nobody has anything else, then we stand adjourned. It is 3:36 p.m. and we'll see you on the 9th.
Good job,
And
Leslie.
thank y'all.
Thank you.
Y'all were great today. This is my final meeting. Y'all were great. You actually accomplished things, so we'll see what happens with it. As been mentioned many times, a lot of hurdles, but y'all came up with some preliminary recommendations, which is actual progress. So good job.
Mark, is this your last meeting?
This will be my last meeting, and I am unlikely to call in to the next meeting. Very unlikely. That's possible.
Thank you for everything that you've done to keep us sort of organized. We really appreciate your help on this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Send everything to Tony Slagle. That's my recommendation.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.